I carried a homemade cake into my parents' house. My father glanced at me from his seat and stated, "Let's not have a scene. Just set it down and go." My mother took the cake from me, let out a laugh, and set it on the floor for their dog. "At least he'll appreciate it," she remarked. I simply turned and left. That evening, I withdrew every cent from our shared bank account. The following day, when they discovered the zero balance, I had barely stepped inside before my father looked at me from the sofa and repeated, "Don't start a drama. Just leave it and go." That was my holiday greeting. I recall gazing at him, then at the flickering lights draped carelessly around the banister. They were the same decorations from the past decade, only coated in more dust. I stood there holding the cake, a triple-layer cranberry spice with mascarpone frosting. I'd made it completely by hand. No pre-made mixes, no taking the easy way, even candying the orange peel myself. I had harbored a faint hope that if I brought something beautiful, if I attempted one more time, they might finally meet me in the middle. My mother entered from the kitchen, saw the cake, and let out a genuine, though brief and arid, laugh. She took it from my grasp without making eye contact, walked to the corner, and set the whole creation, intricate piping and all, on the floor beside Max, their golden retriever. He sniffed it and began eagerly licking the frosting off. "At least he'll enjoy it," she said. I didn't protest, didn't raise my voice, didn't shed a tear. I didn't even ask for an explanation. I just turned and walked out. The cold air struck my face sharply, but I didn't fasten my coat. I drove home without a sound, my phone vibrating with ignored messages. And that night, I cleared the account. It was the joint one I had opened 2 years prior when my father lost a portion of his pension and they began falling behind on their house payments. I was the only one regularly funding it. They had stopped adding to it after just 4 months. I had been covering the property taxes, the home insurance, and even paid for their water heater repair the previous winter. They always had a justification, and I had always trusted them until that night. I felt no remorse when I moved the money. $23,178. Not a single cent of it was taken unlawfully. I didn't spend it. I simply moved it to a personal account and revoked their access. By morning, I had become the antagonist. First came the missed calls, then the texts, then the threats. My father wrote that he was filing a police report. My mother said she was ashamed to call me her daughter. Then, she added a comment that lingered. "You always spoil everything. You were born creating drama." That was when I understood this wasn't an isolated incident. It was merely the latest entry in a long-established, exhausting pattern. And I had permitted it to continue for years. At noon, I received a text from Emily. "We need to talk. Call me." She never chose sides. That was her function. The middle sister, eternally neutral. I told her to come over that evening, and she agreed. But she brought Jeremy with her, which I wasn't prepared for. He was already angry when he stepped through the door. He didn't greet me. He just said, "You stole from them." I told them both to take a seat. I laid out the entire situation. I showed them bank records, payment receipts, every bill I had covered over the last 2 years. I pulled up emails where my mother thanked me for handling the electricity bill again. I even showed them a picture of a message she sent last Christmas asking if I could lend them just a few hundred more to make it through the month. Emily was silent. She reviewed the documentation and didn't argue. Jeremy didn't say much either, but after a moment, he stood and announced he was going to speak with them. I asked him not to. I told him they would distort it. That they always did. He left anyway. That night, Emily stayed. We sat on the sofa, watching the tree lights flash silently. Then she said something I hadn't anticipated. "I always thought you were exaggerating." She didn't need to say more than that. The next day, I didn't hear from Jeremy. Not in the morning. Not by the afternoon. I knew he had gone over there. I didn't require confirmation. The silence communicated everything. Around 3 p.m., I got an alert from the old group chat we never used anymore. The one originally created to plan a beach trip 5 years ago that had slowly become a cemetery of unread messages and awkward birthday reminders. Jeremy had written, "We're all meeting tomorrow, 4 p.m. Emily's house." A moment later, my mother added, "It's about time. We need to stop pretending Monica's conduct is acceptable." I stared at the screen for a long while. I wanted to reply. I wanted to ask, what conduct? Wanting to be treated with basic respect? Wanting to not be used. But I already knew how that would unfold. Anything I said would be used as proof that I was irrational, difficult, overly sensitive. I closed the application and didn't respond at all. The next day, I arrived 10 minutes early. I sat in my car outside Emily's place for a while, watching children ride by on scooters. It was strange to think how I used to come here for movie nights and relaxed Sundays. Now it felt like entering a courtroom. I brought a folder, not out of malice, but because I didn't want to rely on memory anymore. It contained a record of every transaction I had made into that joint account. Every instance I covered for them, every bill I paid, every time my mom or dad messaged me requesting help and vowing to repay me. They showed up together, late. Of course, my mother walked in smiling as if she were the guest of honor. My father was quiet, which was typical. He only really spoke when he had a grievance. Jeremy came in last, already looking annoyed. They barely greeted anyone. Emily sat at the kitchen table with a pot of tea between us, as if we were going to sip chamomile and mend decades of damage with polite conversation. My mother began immediately. She said I had overreacted, that the cake incident was a misunderstanding, a joke, that I was perpetually too sensitive. Then she shifted to attacking my character. She said I had always been this way. Theatrical, highly emotional, easily insulted. She said I always complicated things unnecessarily. My father added that what I did with the account was illegal, that I had no right, that I had endangered them. Jeremy joined in, demanding if I had any concept of the trouble I'd caused, how the mortgage was due the following week, and they were in a panic. I waited until they had finished speaking. Then I handed the folder to Emily. No speeches, no justifications, just paper. She turned the pages slowly. You could see the understanding dawning on her with each sheet. Transfers, emails, payment confirmations, a printout of a message from my mother asking if I could help cover one more thing back in March. Then Emily looked up and asked my mother directly, "Why didn't you contribute to this account?" My mother blinked, as if the question had caught her off guard. She muttered something about not remembering, that she thought it was for emergencies only, that it wasn't a significant issue. Emily didn't drop it. She pointed out that I had been paying their mortgage, their heating bills, that my father's dental work was charged to my credit card, and that I hadn't taken a single penny from them in return. Jeremy took the folder next. He looked through it, then set it down and stared at both of them. "Why did you let her do all this?" he asked. My father finally spoke. He said, "She offered. She liked feeling necessary. That if she was so bothered by it, she should have refused." That was the moment I stopped caring if they ever understood my perspective. It was clear they felt no guilt. They felt nothing at all. We argued. I told them they had humiliated me on Christmas, and, instead of apologizing, they had intensified their stance. I said I had supported them for years and never once made them feel inferior about it, but they had no issue embarrassing me in front of their dog. They didn't deny it. My mother simply said, "If you want to be treated like a grown-up, stop behaving like a victim." Jeremy didn't defend me, but he didn't defend them either. Emily was the only one who looked truly disturbed. She asked if we could attempt family counseling. She said perhaps there was still something left to salvage here. I didn't answer. I just picked up the folder and left. That night, my mother sent me a text. "You're still our daughter, but you need professional help. We are not your adversaries." The next morning, I received a call from the bank. They said a fraud claim had been filed against me concerning a joint account submitted by my parents. The woman on the phone sounded perplexed. She asked if I was aware of a recent disagreement over a joint account. I said yes. Then she asked if I had made the transfer. I said yes again. She paused, as if waiting for a more complex explanation. I could tell she had seen the account activity and probably anticipated something messy, perhaps some indication of fraud. But the truth was straightforward. My name was on the account. I had authorized every transaction. Nothing was forged. No password was compromised. Just a quiet, total withdrawal of money I had deposited in the first place. She said the report would be examined, but based on what she was viewing, I had no reason for concern. Then she gently advised that I might want to close the account to prevent further complications. I thanked her. Then I hung up and sat on the floor of my apartment, phone in hand, staring at the wall as if it held answers. They had tried to report me. Not even 2 days after pretending they wanted to resolve things. After Jeremy and Emily sat in the same room and tried to repair the rift, after my mother texted me about love and family and not being enemies, they had still gone to the bank behind my back. I didn't say anything to Emily immediately. I assumed she was probably already getting calls from them, hearing their side, trying to maintain calm. But later that night, she texted me a screenshot. It was a message from our mother sent to both her and Jeremy. I don't know what's wrong with Monica anymore. She's always been unstable. She was never the intelligent one. Emily didn't add any commentary. Just sent the image. That was sufficient. That same night, I started composing a list. It was something a therapist had once suggested back when I was trying to establish boundaries. A list of what you've done for people who take you for granted. Not to use it against them, just to remind yourself you're not insane. I listed everything. The mortgage assistance, the bills, the times I left work to drive them to appointments, the job I declined 2 years ago because it would have required moving out of state, and they weren't prepared for that. The groceries, the calls with their insurance company when their first claim was denied. Then I wrote down everything they had done in return. It was a much shorter list. The next day, Jeremy called. He asked if we could meet, just the two of us. We met at a coffee shop near his apartment. I didn't expect much, but he looked more weary than angry this time. He said he had reviewed the bank documents again, with a new perspective. That perhaps he had been too hasty to assume I was acting out. That maybe he had accepted our parents' version of events without truly examining the facts. Then he asked a question I wasn't prepared for. Do you still want to help them? I didn't answer immediately. He said they were struggling, that the mortgage was behind, that our father might require surgery in the spring, that if I walked away now, their situation would deteriorate. He didn't state it explicitly, but I could sense he still believed I should help, that I should just be the more mature person. But I asked him a question in return. Did they tell you they filed a fraud report against me? He froze. No, they didn't. That altered everything. By the time we parted, he seemed uncertain. He said he needed time to think. I told him to take it. I wasn't pursuing anyone anymore. Later that evening, Emily called. She said she was coming over, and she brought a folder. Inside were screenshots of messages our mother had sent her over the past year. Some were about me. Most were unkind. One said I'd always been dramatic, even as a child. Another said I wasn't cut out for adult life, and that she felt sorry for whoever married me. One just stated, "She's so stupid sometimes it actually frightens me." I read them all. Then I handed the folder back. Emily said she hadn't known, that she never realized how severe it had become, that she didn't want to be a part of it anymore either. We sat quietly for a long time. Then she asked if I was truly finished. I said I didn't know. But the next morning, I called the mortgage company and informed them I would no longer be assisting with payments. A week after I told the mortgage company I was done, the voicemails started arriving. First, it was just my mother. Brief, sharp messages about duty. Then longer ones, the kind that oscillate between guilt and blame as if she couldn't decide which tactic was more effective. Then came my father's voice, mumbling a sort of semi-apology that devolved into a lecture midway through. Then they stopped. That silence should have felt like peace, but it didn't. It felt like something was gathering, like the calm right before a storm breaks. 3 days later, I found out from Emily what they were actually doing. She called and said they were attempting to hire a lawyer. Not for the account anymore. The bank had dismissed that, but they were inquiring about financial coercion, alleging I had manipulated them into letting me control the money and was now using it to penalize them. I laughed, not because it was humorous, but because it was ludicrous. I had created the account at their request. I had paid every bill they forwarded to me, and now they were labeling that manipulation. I told Emily I didn't care. I had everything documented, every transfer, every agreement. And if they wanted to escalate this, I would happily let a judge review it all. But then she said something else. They told Aunt Laura you were taking money for drugs. That halted me completely. I hadn't spoken to Aunt Laura in nearly 2 years, not since a dispute between her and my mother over some unwanted family heirloom. But she and my mother still communicated occasionally. And apparently, my parents were telling anyone who would listen that I had a substance problem and that they were worried about me. Emily said she didn't believe them, but Jeremy might. And he had started making calls, asking questions. That's when something became clear. This was no longer just about money. They were trying to destroy my reputation within the family. Make me appear unstable. Make me the scapegoat.